Welcome to Sunday Talks. We're having a great time this season on talking about hot topics, things that Christians are often too afraid to talk about, or when we do, we find it to be divisive, or we lose friendships over that. I certainly don't want to lose this friendship. This is Paul Hudson. If you don't know Paul, you need to meet him. I was thinking this week, Paul, 13 years. I've known
Is it
you.
really?
13 years. Yeah, we were just little kids.
Just little kids back then.
And in fact, I think the picture that we have of you in the bulletin was 13 years ago. Because I was trying to find one. It's like, he doesn't look like that anymore. You didn't have a beard, and your hair was like really, really blonde. Yeah.
What are you saying it is now, Larry?
Well,
Less blonde.
it's less blonde.
It's
Yeah.
less
There's less
blonde.
hair and it's less blonde.
I got you. Okay.
But Paul is the pastor, founding pastor, even of one church in downtown Conway, and
Much to your help.
well, I tell you what, one of my greatest joys of being a association missionary was watching that process happen and getting to be there the night that you had a sort of formation meeting with about 30 people or less, maybe even, and I told you this then. I can say it now. I walked out of there and said, I don't know how this is going to work. And but it has, and it's been phenomenal.
God's
and
very faithful, isn't he?
He has, and it's been incredible. And a lot of things that you're doing, I've watched and said, hey, we need to be doing more of that, and I appreciate you. One of the best things I can say about Paul is he's married to Christy, and they have 3 wonderful kids. We were just talking about PJ a moment ago, that he's in church now with Tyler and Haley, that are a couple of my kids. And I was thinking about Christy and Carla. What were they thinking? I mean,
We caught them at moments of weakness.
God was gracious to us in allowing them to cross our paths. But here's what I'll say about Paul is that he genuinely loves God and he genuinely loves people. And I knew whatever topic we would talk about, it was going to be genuine, sincere from your heart. And I also know after just we've talked about this is that you're well researched and you know what you're talking about when it comes to this topic of immigration. This is one of those hot topics that is a lightning bolt. I just went back through in my own catalog of emails from church members about immigration, and a lot of the content we can't use here because people are so polarized and have so many opinions. We're going to jump into this. There's a lot of stuff. We're going to try to narrow this down into 30, 40 minutes. We were talking about this earlier, that America is the most open when it comes to immigration. Half of the world that immigrates from one country to another comes into this country. You had some specific numbers on that.
Well, I think the beginning place is always truth, right? So that's why God's word is our centerpiece, because He is our truth. And so I think getting the right numbers and getting the right information always helps us frame a context. And as a Christ follower, I heard a guy one time, he made the comment, well, I can have a Christian perspective and I can have a biblical perspective, and those two don't have to agree. And I couldn't disagree more.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I'm going to have a Christian perspective, it must always align with a biblical perspective.
Right.
But that demands that I seek truth, right? All of us are responsible for not just what we choose to believe, but who we choose to listen to.
Right.
Right? And so some of the numbers that are important to me is that in the last, since our inception, the United States has been the most loved nation to come to, and we have had the easiest, the best success at bringing in immigrants, and we are a nation of immigrants. I know lots of times the phrase that is on a copper plaque at the bottom of the Statue of Liberty says, "Bring me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses." Lots of times that's thrown back at Christians or at people and said, well, how has America done? The reality is that in the last several years, we have had over 1 million immigrants a year that have followed the rules, that have come in, that we have given naturalized status. And for them, because we have family migration, there's another 3.4 people that join them. So it's not 1 million a year.
Yeah.
It's
So that's greater than the population of Arkansas a year.
That's right.
Coming in legally. Our families did that. We both had some Native American background. Of course, they came from somewhere too to come here. My grandmother, trace her heritage. My grandfather came in from Scotland, his family, and traced it all back. In fact, I realized this. They were in Kansas, where your people
really?
were from. But that was in the late 1800s. Before that, they were up north. Found out I was a Yankee. I didn't know that, so, I ticked off a group of people right there. So
I think heritage is important.
Absolutely.
But what defines who I am today? And I think
Yeah.
part of this whole conversation for me stems back to the biblical process of who is my identity? Mm-hmm. Who is my identity is in Jesus Christ.
Right.
And so that's where I begin.
Yeah.
Do I just begin
And
there
that's
for
what
truth,
we've
but-
said in each one of these topics, is that we want to think biblically, we want to think critically.
Mm-hmm.
What does the Bible say? And because there's so many voices talking about everything. And, man, you turn on any one of the news stations, you talk about immigration, no one, I mean, it doesn't matter which party, no one said, well, the Bible says this, or here's where the Bible comes from. And so I appreciate your perspective on that. I want to jump into that. I'm going to skip over one of the things I said I was going to talk about. We probably come back to that.
Okay.
But we start with a biblical perspective. And so I want to just dive into some of your notes of things that you've done some research on, and starting with that biblical perspective.
So trying to understand, I always love being able to look at every side, every facet of an issue, because I think that we do injustice if we ignorantly only look at the side that we think agrees with us, right? And so trying to look at all the sides, I came across a couple of quotes. One of them is from the InterVarsity Multi-Ethnic Ministry, which here's what the quote is. Whatever you believe about the politics of immigration, if you follow Jesus, you probably seek to submit yourself to God's word. This will not automatically twist your politics in a specific way. Christians can, in good conscience, vote a variety of ways. And I think on the offset, that sounds altruistic. That sounds like, oh yeah, that's true. But if you pull that apart, God's word should twist, should frame, should foundation, should set. God's word should always give specific direction to what I believe about everything. What I believe about immigration or lunch, right?
Right.
And so I have a look. I think that's one of the beauties of any group, far left, far right, far away from Jesus, is that we always try to subtly take words and we twist the meanings of them. The other quote was, here's what it says. That indeed a strong Christian case can be made for extending a radical hospitality, for permeable borders, and for a compassionate approach to immigration. And yet, white evangelicals, those who claim to hold the Bible in highest regard, are more opposed to immigration reform and have more negative views about immigrants than any other religious demographics. And this was given from a person from Harvard Law School just a few years ago, 2018. And the problem with that is that anything that is said, you can't make a rebuttal. You can't even ask questions without assuming a negative response, right?
Yeah.
I think that part of this deal is that I don't think that I'm not against anybody because of the color of their skin. Billy Bob, my grandpa, used to say, I'll never have anything against anybody who's willing to work. And then in a spiritual sense, Jesus said this: if you don't work, you don't eat. He also said, love your neighbor as yourself. And so I think that there are biblical principles that frame what our opinions and our convictions about this whole immigration policy should be. But for me, there's two sides to it. I think that we muddle the case between immigration policy and then what do we do with these people that God calls us to love. And I think we need to look at both of those independently while maintaining a love for the people and doing our best to love. And I like the idea that they talk about how, well, this is a greater opportunity for us to share Jesus. I'm with you. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I have always been amazed that God has been so good, I think, because of our Christian heritage, the founders, framing foundation, fathers of our country, that we have always been so good at being able to share the gospel abroad that God brings people to us.
Absolutely.
So I'm for that. But I also believe extremely that the mandate that God's given us to protect our family,
Right.
protect our home,
Yeah.
to protect what God's given. So,
Well, and you hit I think is the big key on this is policies and people. And so as a Christian, I have responsibility with both. Primarily for you and I as a pastor and most lay people in our churches, we're going to vote on things that are going to be related to policy. We're going to vote on people that are going to help determine that. Now we may actually run for. I'm not running for office.
I'm not running for office.
I got enough politics in the church.
Hey, I thought we'd be good though. Vote for President Larry White.
No, I don't want to be president of anything. But so we're voting now. I'm thankful for Christians who do take that role.
Sure.
But we had Bruce Westerman on this, one of our representatives. But so the policy, we certainly don't want him. The people right behind me, we had this, and I've not really shared this publicly. We had, when I first came to the church, a Hispanic church that was meeting here. Some of the people that were in that church were illegal immigrants. Now, my responsibility, my personal responsibility, I felt like was, and we may even disagree about this, was that we preach the gospel to them. The politics side and the policy side of that was for the government to deal with. Now, my understanding was that some of those people were deported. And again, there are laws, there are things that are there, for a reason. But sometimes it gets muddy like that. It gets really muddy. It's like right here behind us in this room, we were having service. And so I'm thankful we were able to present the gospel. But we got to balance all that. My big thing is even in having these conversations is that we can do it calmly. We can do just like you said, you just read some quotes. You're listening to other people that we may not necessarily agree with, but you brought out something in this that I want to really highlight too, is that, and there's nothing wrong with it, it's the right thing as a Christian. In fact, Eric and I were just having this conversation. As a minister, your first ministry is to your family. Your first responsibility is to your family. And so there's nothing wrong with me wanting to protect and preserve my family and protect and preserve this country. One of the main reasons people are, I've been to Honduras, our church goes on mission trips there. People are leaving there is because of what is the safety in this country, the freedoms we have in this country. If we let everything go, we don't have borders any longer, then we lose all that. Right. Nobody wants to come here. We don't want to be here.
The essential element for family, home, church, culture, community is safety. Mm-hmm. Now, the biblical principle, Jesus said, "My peace I give to you."
Yeah.
That is the biblical principle of safety.
Yeah.
Right? All right.
Yeah.
So if you take those means of safety away, then you're in trouble. Why was the government ever formed to begin with? To take care of its citizens. Mm-hmm. I think that we should be involved and help people of other countries. I just think that we have to do it the way that we have said that we would do it.
Right.
Otherwise, we open ourselves up to not just criticism. Man, we'll be criticized for everything.
Yeah.
We open ourselves up to real danger, which whether you think building a wall, taking a wall down, I'm not really sure what people think when they say, I am for immigration reform. I would be for immigration reform, but then that allows me to determine what I think that reform is, right?
Right.
And I'm pretty sure nobody's going to call me and ask, hey, Paul, what do you think we should be doing there, right? I think there's a large number of people who would say, we got to do a better job at that. I wholeheartedly agree. We have to love people, but we also have to have, we are a culture and a community that runs by the rule of law.
Right. Yeah.
You take the rule of law out, you lose safety. You lose safety, it's chaos.
Yeah.
I realize that most people don't like rules. Boy, you're gonna appreciate me a lot for not chasing a rabbit there.
Hey, let's talk about that at lunchtime.
Okay, well, right. But God gives those authorities.
Right.
A plug for a book.
Yeah, go ahead.
A plug for a book's called Unlimited Submission. It's fairly new.
Okay.
It's by a guy that talks about what is the church's role and what is the Christian's role in response to Romans 13, verses 1 through 5. And that is awesome. It is a great book. It's called Unlimited Submission.
Unlimited Submission.
Yeah,
well, Romans 13 is a passage we go to, and we need to as Christians. There's There are government authorities. Things have been put in place wherever you live. Like we've been on mission trips all over the world. When we go to Belarus, I may not agree with how they do things, but I'm under their authority.
Right.
I've got to do what they say.
When I'm in Zambia or in Mozambique or South Africa, it doesn't matter how much I like if they say you got to stand in line. Guess what I got to do?
Right.
I got to stand in line.
Yeah. And they are dictating that. There's no country in the world that gives as much freedom as we do. And so there's a movement, and I don't want to get too political about this, but there's a movement in our country to just throw out all this stuff, to throw out all of our laws, to just have a free-for-all, and that's not good for anybody.
So, biblically, God is the God of order, not
chaos.
chaos.
Yeah.
And so every time I hear rumblings of stuff like that, I always go back to Romans 1.
Mm-hmm.
For
God
every
gave 'em
intention,
over.
that's
Yeah.
right. God gave them every intention of their mind, their thoughts, their heart was evil
Yeah.
all day long.
Yeah.
And that's where I hurt for our country, because I think that we can have a grown-up, mature, biblical conversation that says, no, these are why we have these laws in place, but here's how we're going to treat the person that we're eye to eye with.
Right.
It really, though, has to do with how are we going to treat the future person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody that would come to church here or One Church or anywhere else, if somebody came to us illegally, or somebody came, let's change the whole complete context. Somebody came to us on drugs and they were broken and would we immediately drive them to the police station, or would we meet their immediate needs? Well, we'd clothe them, we'd feed them, we'd give them something to drink, right?
Right.
I think the same is true. I don't think anybody in any church is saying don't help people, regardless of where they're from.
Right.
The real question here is, all right, what's in the future?
Yeah. And this subject is like so many. We talked about this last week when we talked about politics. This is like so many other issues.
Thank you for not inviting me on that one.
Yes, well, again, I invited my son-in-law, so it's still pretty risky. But it's like every other issue, whether it's homosexuality, whatever we've talked about, is that there's oftentimes politicians, people in the media that want to divide us, that want to get us away from the facts. The facts don't change. The facts are truth. And so often, even with this idea of immigration, is that not a whole lot has changed over many different presidencies. A lot of things are still the same. Some of the things that we've considered abuse, or that, well, I can't believe that's happening, were happening among other administrations. And so, again, not trying to get into politics, but people just oftentimes just don't want. Let's look at what the facts are. Let's take time to actually go in and read and listen. That's even if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, that's fine. But let me go back and listen to that. And people, I think COVID ramped that up, of just that we are so reactionary of, well, oh, did you see this on the news, or did you see that, or did you see how people are being treated, or what this policy that they're proposing? It's like, let's just stop and listen again. And again, it all goes back to, we should settle a lot of things. Go back to the scriptures. Go back, what does the Bible say? Yeah. Go back to us as Christians. What is demanded of us? What are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to treat people? How are we most honoring God?
And I want to be clear. I never want to be ambiguous on things that demand specificity, right? Mm-hmm. And so, just like the gospel is extremely clear, Romans 10, confess with your mouth, believe in your heart. All right, so in this issue, I think that the government's role is to help provide safety first to the United States citizens.
Right.
Our role as United States citizens then is to look at this and say, there's something that needs to change in this, or there's something that needs to be added to this, or there's something that needs to be taken away from it. Because I try to make a yearly habit of reading the Constitution. I have a list of books I try to read every year, and well, not a book, a really good read.
Yeah.
Right? And as you read over that, there's this pride that wells up within you, not because of who you are, but because a group of men said years ago, we're gonna build something that's why people call it the American experiment, right? We're gonna build something that is that is predicated on the idea that God in people will lead them to do the right thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we should be doing in this. Let's do the right thing. The right thing is to obey the laws of the land.
Mm-hmm. And I appreciate what you said about protecting it, and it's not going to be forever. This is none of this is going to last forever.
Yeah.
Us or any other country. what people say, well, sometimes I wonder why God's blessing America. Why does God can do that? We do so much for everybody else, and we're sending people. Y'all personally, one church is planting churches in Africa and sending people over to do mission work. We send people through, and we do together through the cooperative program and Southern Baptist Convention. We're sending missionaries all over the world. God's blessing us because of that.
That's right.
And you know, everybody doesn't have to come to the United States to become a believer. You know, we pray every week in our prayer service for an unreached people group, and man, it just burdens my heart when I think about it. There are people in the Kyrgyzstan, I think was the people, the Dugan people in that country. Not a whole lot, but 144,000 that don't have the Bible in their language. They don't have an evangelical witness, and so they're not probably going to immigrate here. But we have a responsibility to take the gospel to them, and so God's blessing us, and we need to preserve this. We need to make sure.
This is all the way around the loop.
Yeah,
this is all the way around the loop. But some people would say, well, then you should just drop all the borders if you care about reaching the lost people. But here's what happens, and this is in the mind of Paul's economy, right?
Yeah.
That if you drop all the borders, you have no rules, no laws anywhere, then the law of the land becomes whatever people demand
Judges.
is right.
Every man is right in his own eyes.
They say, you Christians can no longer do this, you no longer can do this, you no longer can do this. Then we are stopped from doing missions around the world.
Right, yeah.
And so I think that's why we have a civil responsibility to be involved in politics, to the point that we are voting, you know, doing all those things, speaking what we believe to be biblically true. But at the same time, loving God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and loving your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
And I think as long as I remember that, one of my favorite quotes is, just do the next right thing. G.K. Chesterton said this, and he's one of the guys that I really enjoy reading. He said, it is not that the Christian idea has been tried and found wanting. It is that it has been tried and found difficult. It's not that the Christian idea has been tried and found wanting, as in, well, we tried Christianity and it just didn't work. It didn't fill me up. It didn't do. It said it's been tried and it's been found difficult. I'm not saying the balance of loving people and fighting for our country. And when I say fighting for our country, I mean standing up on biblical morality about all things, right?
Right.
I'm not saying it's easy.
Yeah.
But I'm saying it's the right thing.
Right. Yeah.
It's the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, this is one of those things we talked about when we started off that we could talk about forever. Of course, you and I could talk about a lot of things forever. But there's
maybe they should just start the camera. We just start rambling and you kind of pick and choose stuff.
Well, we'd all be looking for different jobs after that. But there is so much here, and I think we've hit the key points of what the conversation is about. And again, as a Christian, we've got to go back to the Word. Always got to go back to the Word. What does the Bible say? And let's find commonality there. We find unity there. We could build on that. We want to get the gospel out to everybody. Yeah. That's our goal. And one of the reasons I wanted to do Hot Topics was because I found the church so distracted with so many things. We're fighting over everything. And even immigration is not the subject.
Yeah, but where do you think that comes from?
It's Satan. He wants to divide. He wants to conquer.
I love it goes back to that specificity thing. Broad is the road that leads to destruction.
Yeah.
But narrow is the path that leads to life. Yeah. So Jesus says, man, you just love me. You obey me. I've never found anybody who has regretted obeying God.
Yeah.
I find lots of people who have regretted disobeying God. And even this is the fact. And I think that we allow emotional things to get in the way.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we shouldn't ever express emotion, but I think that can't steer the ship.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I for this subject, I fall back to Matthew 20:22, 37, and 38. You can go to all sorts of Old Testament texts where they were told this is how you treat strangers or sojourners, and you can get really technical. And sojourner was somebody who was just passing through, not somebody who was intending to stay.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can get in, but at the heart of it is Jesus said, "Love people." And one of the mantras that I've used every Sunday morning, there's a group of us get together and pray in my office, and every Sunday morning, without fail, I end it with, as we're done, let's go love people like it matters. Mm-hmm. And everybody responds because it does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it does.
Yeah.
I think that's the heart of it.
That's right. And it does. And so there's again, this is complex. I would, if you want to talk more about immigration, are you really, he's got a whole notebook here of stuff, of things, of
Really, if you want to talk more about immigration, I think you should get a hold of Larry White at. I would be willing to talk about lots of stuff. I have the gift of talking, right? Yeah. I don't want to talk somebody into something.
Yeah. But and here was something that I want to say, and then I'm gonna give you the last word. I promise. I won't interrupt again. But one of our past presidents said this, and I've said this about other issues as well, is that our country's not perfect by any means. We've talked about that throughout these conversations. But compared to everybody else, this is the best way. That's why people want to come here. That's why we have people want to be in this country, and that's why immigration has worked so well. It really has worked well for a long, long time when people do it right. And so there's a blessing in all that. There's God's hand is upon our nation. We're grateful for that. We need to take pride in that. We don't want to lose that. And there is, as you said earlier, when you take all that away and you just which no other country is doing. Nobody else is just saying, hey, y'all come.
Well, nobody's wanting to just bail into other countries either.
No. I've yet to find any place that I want to say I would want to go there more than just for a vacation.
Right.
Yeah. So, final word. I'm gonna let you have it.
I guess for me the final thought of this whole thing is Jesus tells a parable of all these people past this guy that had been injured, the Good Samaritan story, right? What made the guy that did the right thing? What made it the right thing? That he cared for people. Mm-hmm. That's what I think that should be our impetus every day.
Yeah.
What am I doing to love the person or the people that God has put in front of? If I'll simply do that, then I can be following Christ today.
Absolutely.
I think that one of my bigger concerns as a whole is that if we as church, there's in the localized church, then there's the larger church. When we allow things, whether it's policies, politics, sports teams, face masks, when we allow anything to separate us, you can't walk with God and stay where you are.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
You got to be willing to walk with God.
Yeah.
And so I would say that maybe for all of us, we're a nation of immigrants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're a nation of immigrants. Let us be a nation that loves people.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Man, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming to do this. And this has been a great pleasure. We've still got a couple more weeks left. We're going to talk about pornography. We're going to talk about divorce and remarriage. And then I don't know if I'm going to do another Hot Topics series or not. But this has been great. I appreciate and I so much appreciate this. Hey, if you're interested in watching some of the others, I encourage you to go back and right wherever you found this, you'll find the rest of them. Sit down, take a few moments, and certainly if it's somebody that you care enough about that may be interested in that subject, take some time and sit down, watch it or listen to it with them, and I think it'll be an encouragement to them. Share it with others. We encourage you to do that. Thank you again, Paul Hudson, for being with me.